Hello, I'm Rick Stivers. Welcome to Young Martin's Reels. Today's project I'm going to be doing for one of my viewers named Tyler. Tyler seems to like ultralight reels, so I managed to acquire this one, and he's looking for higher quality ultralight reels. So I looked around to see what I could find, and I found this nice Daiwa Gold Series GS-10 that I got in the box. It's got original paperwork and stuff. It even has paperwork in it from where the owner sent it back to Daiwa for repairs back in the day. Hang on a second, I'll see if I can find that. Yeah, he sent it to Daiwa's Corporation Attention Service Department, Midway Place, Cerritos, California, mailed 4/24/01. So about 22 years ago, he sent this thing in for repairs, and got it back, and it's all serviceable. Anyway, nice reel, but it has been a long time since it's been serviced now. And the gentleman I bought it from, it belonged to his uncle. And his uncle left it to him when he passed away. And he didn't have a use for it, so he sold it to me. So we are going to service this little Gold Series GS-10 Daiwa reel and get it ready to go. Okay, we're going to start off, I hope, by taking the handle off. And we're not going to do it that way, we're going to do it this way, I think. I think it's going to have a screw on this other side. Yes, it does. Just like the larger versions do. I have a feeling that this little reel is going to be very, very similar to what my GS-90 was that I just redid a little while back. And this great big GS-30 here, if you want a size comparison. Yeah, that's quite, and I'm going to be redoing this reel too, but just not today. And let's see here, we'll go ahead and take the rotor off. Now I'm going to be stripping this line off. You can see the line is ruined. The rubber band had sat on there so long that it melted into the line. Okay. We're going to be cleaning that up underneath and putting it back. All right. Yeah, that's still pretty big for, okay. So I get the impression that this is a removable spool. Yes, it is. Okay, so we could have just pushed the button to remove the spool, but we've taken it apart. All right. And the big ones aren't made that way. So that is a difference there. Let's see if the bail trips. It does, trips well. Anti-reverse override works. Chris, you ought to like that. Okay, and I'm going to zoom in just a little, not a lot, just a little. And I'm going to try really hard to keep this in view. Here's our, and we got a shim on the outside, which is unusual. Usually shims are on the inside. So we'll keep that. And let's go ahead and take off the bearing. And we're going to take off the arm. And we are looking at all metal construction reel here, but hopefully, Tyler, you won't be disappointed in the fact that this reel doesn't have a worm gear. I think you tend to really appreciate the worm gear reels. Well, this reel doesn't have one, but it is an all metal construction reel. Set that up. Okay, now we should be able to take out the main gear. Okay, now that's a little bit different design on the anti-reverse. Sorry, a little bit different design on the crosswind block. That screws directly onto the shaft, and then the pin here goes through the crosswind arm, which rotates on the main gear. All right. Still trying to get the main gear out, but it seems to have a problem with the bearing having popped out on that side. So let's see if we can get it to go. Yeah, that bearing is stuck on the other side. It's like a 10 millimeter, and it is. Okay. Unscrew that, take the rotor off. Okay, anti-reverse override. We flip the lever, move that over out of the way. We can take the gear off then. And we're going to have difficulty getting to the third screw, which means we're going to have to take this off. In order to do that, we want a really good look at where the spring goes. Okay, and if you look, the spring wraps around here. It's got a hook right there. See the hook? How it hooks on there? And it comes up and it wraps around and comes back up this other side and sits on that post. We'll take that loose like that, and we're going to take this screw out and remove this anti-reverse. Okay, take the screw out, take the lever out, and there's the spring underneath. And there's really not much to that spring if you look at it. Okay. All right, that's got that out of the way. Now, we should be able to remove these 3 screws. And it's got those 3 screws out. Now we should be able to take out the pinion gear. And maybe with that out of the way, we can get this separated. But no, it still doesn't want to come out. Okay. All right, we're going to have to cheat the system a little bit in order to get that out without damaging. In order to get that out without damaging this anti-reverse arm over here, we're going to have to remove this arm. And we'll do that by removing the screw here. We'll remove the knob that fits on the end of it. Come on. There we go. And then this shaft is going to slide forward. Now you're spring loaded right here. See how you got the spring on it? Now as we slide this up, that spring's going to want to lift up and out of the hole there like so. Okay? And we'll put that in the same exact way we took it out. Now we can remove this and we can get this stuck bearing, hopefully, off of this side. And all right, now what I usually do on these when they're jammed on here like this is I'll take a file and I'll run it around here. But Chris has recently been telling me about his technique for doing this, and we're going to give it a try. What I'm going to, well, I'll just show you in just a minute. Okay, what I'm going to do is I'm going to very gently put this main gear into this drill chuck. And when I say gently, I mean just exactly that. I don't want to really crank this thing down on it, because what you can do is crush that sleeve that it's built into. Okay, that's it. That's about all we're going to get. Okay, now we can kind of spin it up. Now, as you see, it's not really on the chuck all that well because it's not lined up. But what we're going to do is we're going to take this sandpaper. And we're going to wrap this sandpaper around it like so. And we're going to gently sand this gear sleeve. And this should be just thrilling Chris to death since he's been wanting me to try this. We're almost there. There we go. And now, to make sure that I can get it on there easily, we'll go ahead and polish it just a little bit more. There we go. And now that bearing should go on and off easily. And it does. Now let's get this out of here and make sure that we haven't damaged the other side, which we haven't. It looks fine, but I'm going to polish it just slightly anyway. Like so. There we go. And now the bearing will fit on either side just as easily. Okay? All right. So that's all apart. We have our pinion gear here, and the bearing goes on and off very easily there. Okay? And it's in good shape. And I'm going to scrub these parts up. Let's go ahead and take this apart while we're at it. Okay, we're going to take this tensioner off. We're going to take this drag washer off. And that's it. Make sure that that one doesn't pop off. Oh, it does. Oh, there we go. And there's lots of dirt underneath there that we need to clean up. That's what I thought. Okay. And I'm going to be stripping the line off of this, and then we're going to scrub it all up real good. That part will be in good shape. And this bail is tripping beautifully, so I really don't want to mess with it. I mean, there's no grind or anything in this. There is no sand in this reel. But there is, see this right here? I believe what that is the remains of that rubber band. And we're going to scrape that off. There we go. Okay, so I'm going to spray this with WD-40 and clean it. We're going to oil the bail wire. We're going to oil here. And it does have some dirt in there. But I've got a new technique. Take a good close look at how this looks inside. Okay, that's dirty inside, right? And what I'm going to do, I'm going to take this out to my garage. I'm going to try to start getting into this instead. Because it's really a bad habit to take these bail wires apart. And I'm afraid we're getting people into trouble that way. What we're going to be doing, we're going to be spraying WD-40 in there. Like so, just a little bit. And we're going to take a brush like this, and we're going to brush it around down in there. We're going to move this back and forth a few times. We're going to zoom back out. And we're going to do that a few times. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to take it down to my air compressor, and I'm going to blow compressed air into that joint and see if we can't make sure that there's no old grease or dirt or anything else left down inside that joint that could cause us any grief without having to take this apart And yes, I know I'm just going to really start recommending that we not take these apart. I've been showing people how to do it for a while now, and I have had a few that broke on me trying to put them back together. And I really don't want that to be a habit that we get into, is taking those apart. They clean up nicely. Okay. And I'm going to go blow this out with compressed air and blow some more WD-40 in it. And I will be back in just a few minutes and see how that cleaned up, and then I'll go scrub everything else up. I'm pretty satisfied with how that came out. I took it down, I sprayed it good with WD-40, and I blew it out a few times. And well, does it feel any better than it did? No, because it felt perfect to begin with. So, but in order to find out how really effective we were, I'm still going to take this thing apart. But this may be one of the last ones that you see me do. If I take this apart and find it very clean, there was a lot of dirt in it to begin with. I blew a lot of dirt out, but I want to see just how much dirt is left inside it now that we have sprayed it and blown it out. Okay, this has got one of those coil, those, I call them 90-degree elbow springs. Let's see just how clean this is inside. Okay. Well, it does still have some old grease in it. And where that old grease is, it could very well have had some dirt pack into it. But overall, this part up here where the friction would be is in really good shape. The old grease that stayed here has melted up pretty well. Let's wipe this out. Overall, I think it did pretty nice. Okay, let's see about putting it back together. I'll put this one up in the hole up here. And see if we can get this to go in like so. Like that. And now, let's put the big screw back in. And I hope that spring stayed in place. I'll find out in just a second if it did or not. It feels like it did. Put that back over there. And the spring did not stay in its spot. Okay, so let's take it apart. And herein lies the problem that you run into, is these things will end up being taken apart, put back together, taken apart, put back together. And it takes a tremendous amount of effort sometimes to get these to go back. And now part of the problem here is that the end of this spring is just so short. I'm going to add just a hair of bend to it if I can, like so. All right, and I think we're going to make that the end that goes in this end over here. Okay, so here we go once again. Let's put the spring in. I got a longer tag in. We're going to put in this top up this time, and slide that down. So far, I think the spring is staying in. Now we need to put this tag end into that hole over there. Like so. And now, yes, now we are in the correct position to spring properly. And all the grease is out. But you see how much that little bit of grease that was left in there really wasn't going to make that much difference. And now if it had been grit, maybe it would have been a little bit of difference, but it wasn't. So I'm going to suggest to you that you don't take this thing all apart like I've been doing. But I always tell people that anyway, and then I go ahead and show them how to do it, how to take it apart. But I'm not sure we're going to continue to do that because I'm afraid that we are leading people down the path of, hey, he did it, why don't you do it? And that's what I'm afraid of. So just do as my mama used to say, do as I say, not as I do. Yeah. So don't take them apart if you can help it. Okay. All right, that's in good shape. Let's see about the roller up here. Let's go ahead and take the roll. Now the roller, I do recommend going ahead and taking that apart and cleaning it. I did spray this and I did clean it with WD-40, but I'm not sure that the roller really got that much going for it there. Although this looks pretty clean. Yeah, look at that. That come out real nice. All right, so let's go ahead. We're going to put a drop of oil on the roller. We're going to slip it back together. Put the screw back in it. But do you see how quickly this lined up? When you've got one that lines up that well, you're probably going to be in pretty good shape. It's when they don't line up properly is when things get messed up. Okay, here we go. Okay, now we're going to come back. We're going to add oil, a little bit there, put some here, put some under the head of the screw on this side, and put some here. Work it in a little bit, and that's good. I'm going to go clean these parts up, and we'll be back in a minute. All right, we're back. The parts are scrubbed clean now. The pinion gear has been cleaned well. And what we're going to do, we're going to start off by putting this anti-reverse override back in. First thing we want to do, though, is put just a dab of grease in the holes where it passes through the body, just to make sure that we are well lubed there. I'm probably going to give them a shot of oil later, but for now, that's what I want to do. Okay, now this spring, if this spring has come loose on you, this spring hooks in from the bottom, like so. Okay, you can hold it in your hand like that, and then you start working the rod down in to the body. And then once you get it down here where the spring can make contact, you need to work on getting the spring end of it in the hole, like so. Like so. Okay, once you've done that, go ahead and rotate it around to where you've got tension on the spring like that. Okay, and it's trying to pop back out. Okay, now put your finger on it and hold it on there. And you can come back to this other side and put this knob back on. And you're going to have to line it up with the flat. There's the flat, I think. Yep, lines right up. Here goes the screw. I'm going to put the screw back in. And now our anti-reverse override is on, and you can flip it both ways and the spring won't pop out. See there? Okay. With that done, we're almost ready to go ahead and put the pinion back in, but let's hold off for a second. Let's go ahead and put our bearings back in. Okay, now these bearings down here, the one that goes on the top up here, that bearing is a shielded bearing on both sides. These two down here are sealed on the outside, open on the inside. Okay, we're going to go ahead and put the bottom one in at this point. Snap it in with the open side facing in, and go ahead and give it plenty of oil. Okay. Now we're going to set the pinion gear back in, but we're going to give, before we do, we're going to go ahead and give this shielded bearing a drink of oil as well, and spin it up a little bit. And now let's go ahead and add the grease onto the pinion gear. Make sure to get it onto the shaft right here, because that's got to go into the body right here and ride there. And this is the only time it's ever going to get lubricated. There you go. Okay, with that in place, at this point we're ready to put our bearing retainer back on. We can set this up in place, and we're going to take and put a dab of grease on the end of the screwdriver to hold the screws in place while you line them up, like so. Don't screw them all the way in. I'm going to go ahead and give it another shot of oil on that bearing. And we'll set the anti-reverse claw back on, or cog. Okay. Now, we're going to set this piece back up in here, like so. And this is where the screw is going to go. I'll go ahead and get it started. And, well, I was a little bit too carried away with getting it started, because it's got to go through this spring. So let's back it up, set the spring back in place, like so, then put the screw in and get it started. Okay, now as you screw it down, there's a shoulder on this screw, and you've got to get the spring up onto that shoulder, not let it get trapped under it. Okay, make sure nothing's trapped. Now we're going to set the spring back to this other side. It's got to come up and over the top to this side, like so. Now that'll be pulling that in. And now I'll zoom in so you can see. We put that arm right there. And now this arm here's got to go over here and behind that post. And that is going to give you your anti-reverse. And then your override, when you flip it, goes like that. Now you have anti-reverse override. Okay, let's zoom back out. Okay. At this point, we can go ahead and put our rotor back on. Line up the flats with the flats on the pinion. Let's tighten down the nut. There we go. Okay. This is a slam bale. So it comes around and it hits this post right here, and that's what trips it. Okay. That looks great. Next to be installed is going to be, I believe, the main gear. We're going to put grease on the teeth. A little bit on the shaft here where it's going to go through the bearing. Set that in, drop it in, there we go. Okay, now remember when I took this apart, I noted that this shim isn't normally on top of the bearing, it's normally under the bearing. Well, I went back and checked the schematic for it. By the way, it's the one that was in the bag. And if you look right here, you will see there's that shim, and it sits under the bearing, not on top of it. So, yeah, those normally sit, when this arm goes in, like so, that shim will lay on top of that, and it helps hold that in place. So, yeah, I'd never seen the bearing first and then that. So, that's the way we're going to put that together. Okay, next we are going to try to install the axle shaft. We're going to oil it. Slide it down through the pinion into here. And this is where it's going to slide into this crosswind block. And the crosswind block sits into a slot down there. And we're going to go ahead and grease the bottom of that, where it's going to sit into that slot. And then go ahead and set it in place like this, and see if we can go ahead and line up the axle shaft into the crosswind block, like so. There we go. Put our screw in. Okay. Now, let's go ahead and grease the back side of the gear where the crosswind arm is going to ride. And this pin right here. And just for good measure, we'll go ahead and grease the downside of the crosswind arm. We'll sit it in place. And we've got to line it up with the pin on the axle shaft. I think it's easier to put the pin in first and then align the arm. There we go. Okay. All right. That's going to ride like that, which will move that up and down. All right, now we're going to put on the shim, which it's actually a very large shim. It should be a much smaller shim, which may be why it was put in the wrong place, because it doesn't really fit in there very well, does it? Okay, and we'll go ahead and put the bearing on, like so. And we should be ready to put this side case on. We're going to be adding this in here at the end of the video. Hopefully everybody's watching to the end of the video, so if you ever need something like that, you can do that. Where I had that large shim that looked like it was the size of a bearing, that's a shim that somebody put in there as a bearing spacer to move the bearing forward closer to the main gear. We still didn't have the shim washer that went inside, so I got one of these much smaller, and I tried this one first. This one here is the 0.5 millimeter. That's a 0.5 millimeter thick shim, and I tried those first, and that made the reel too tight. But what I had a little bit of play back and forth, and so I put in one of these 0.1 millimeter, and that seems to have done it just about right. There's still just a hair of play, but I'm afraid if I add another 0.1 millimeter in there, it's going to stiffen it up too much. And right now it's performing beautifully. So I did go back and add a shim in there. I moved that big shim back behind the bearing, and I just want to let you guys know that that's what I did. Like that, and put our 3 screws in. Okay, let's install the handle. Tighten down the screw. Okay. Pretty nice. Let's put the side cover screw back in. Okay. Now let's see if we can reassemble our spool. Okay, we've got the spool. We have the bottom side of the spool, which has a spring for the clicker. Let's go ahead and oil the clicker, the base of the clicker, so that it can move, and under the head of the screw, and then go ahead and put some oil on the spring to help protect it from corrosion. And we're ready to slide that back in. There's our clicker. You can see it. Okay. Now we're ready. Oh, I found a piece I didn't clean. All right. Got the washer that goes on. That's a keyed washer. Goes on like so. Then we've got our Teflon. And we have the tensioner. And the drag knob itself. And we can adjust that properly once it's installed on the reel. Okay, then this just sits on. And it should line up and plug in. Got to get it lined up with the line. There we go. There we go. And now that's removable. Or it should be. Yes. Okay, that goes on. Now let's see what we got for drag. You can tighten that down a little bit. Okay. There you have the GS-10 by Daiwa, and how to service it, how to take care of it. And I hope you like this. Tyler, I hope you like this one. Just in case you didn't, I am going to be doing this Daiwa 1000C next. It's the same size reel. The 10 and the 1000 are pretty much compatible with each other, but I've got to do that one too. And it should be basically the same reel, it appears. The GS-10 was made in Japan. The Daiwa 1000C was made in Korea. I know you don't tend to like Japanese reels. Maybe you'll like this GS-10. Maybe you won't. For now, that's Rick Stivers with Young Martin's Reels, signing out.